The town of Alder Road did not appear on most maps. Drivers passed the exit without noticing the cracked wooden sign leaning into tall grass. Even the highway lights seemed to fade a little sooner near that stretch of road, as if the place preferred to stay hidden. On a quiet autumn morning, a single bus stopped there. No passengers waited. No shops were open. Only wind moved through empty streets carrying the faint smell of rust and old rain. From that bus stepped a woman named Aloan Pike. She was not young and not old. Her coat was worn by long travel. Her shoes carried dust from cities that never asked her to stay. In one hand she held a small leather case dark with age. In the other she carried a folded letter softened by too much reading. She looked at the silent town as though listening for something beneath the quiet. No one greeted her. Yet she did not seem surprised. Aloan had spent most of her life searching for places people forgot. Closed libraries. Empty stations. Rooms sealed behind doors that no longer opened. She believed forgotten places protected memories better than living ones. But this journey felt different. Heavier. Closer to the heart she tried to guard. Because the letter in her hand carried a handwriting she knew. A careful narrow script that belonged to a man who had vanished 23 years earlier. Her father. The letter contained only one sentence. The truth waits beneath the throne that was never meant to be found. No name. No date. No reason. Only that line and a return address from Alder Road. For 2 decades Aloan tried to believe he had chosen to disappear. It was easier than asking why. Easier than wondering if something terrible had happened in silence. Then 3 nights ago the letter appeared at her door. No stamp. No mark of travel. Only her name written clearly as if the sender had always known where she would be. Since that moment sleep had felt distant. She stepped away from the bus and watched it leave. The sound of the engine faded until the town felt sealed away from the rest of the world. Ahead stood a row of brick buildings with windows covered in dust and wood. Paint peeled in long tired strips. A diner sign hung crooked above a door that would never open for morning coffee again. Somewhere a loose shutter tapped slowly against a wall. A hollow rhythm like a weak heartbeat. Aloan breathed in the cold air. Dust touched her tongue. Memory followed close behind. She whispered without meaning to. I should have come sooner. The words disappeared into empty space. She unfolded the letter again. The paper felt thin and fragile. Her fingers paused over the phrase beneath the throne. There had never been a palace in Alder Road. No crown. No ruler. Nothing grand enough to hold such a word. Unless the throne meant something else. A memory stirred. At the center of town stood an old courthouse with tall pale columns. Inside the main hall rested a massive wooden chair once used by the founding judge. People in town used to joke and call it the throne of Alder Road. As a child Aloan played near that chair while her father worked below in the records room. He spent his days protecting files that no one else cared to read. He used to tell her every town hides one secret strong enough to change the story of its past. Back then she believed he was only telling stories to pass the time. Now she was no longer certain. Wind moved along the street lifting dry leaves into a slow turning circle. For a moment the sound felt like distant whispering. Aloan folded the letter and placed it carefully inside her coat. Her heartbeat sounded louder than the silence around her. She began walking toward the center of town. Each step created a faint echo. Empty places always answered footsteps in strange ways. Halfway down the street she noticed something that did not belong to the past. Fresh tire tracks in the dust. Only one set. Recent enough to still hold shape. So someone had come here. Maybe someone still remained. The thought brought no comfort. only sharp attention. She continued forward. Dark windows reflected her movement like quiet mirrors. In one reflection she almost believed another figure followed several steps behind. When she turned there was nothing. Only drifting leaves and still air. At the end of the road the courthouse appeared. Smaller than memory. Paint faded from white to tired gray. One column leaning slightly as if worn down by years of waiting. Yet the building still carried dignity. Like an old guardian refusing to fall. The front doors were closed tight. A heavy chain wrapped through the handles. Rust colored the metal deep brown. A faded notice clung weakly to the wood declaring the building condemned. Alowan studied the chain without touching it. If the building was sealed, how could the truth still wait inside? Unless someone wanted it to seem unreachable. Her father loved puzzles. Hidden locks. Messages disguised as ordinary sentences. Small secrets placed where only patience could find them. She searched the doorway slowly. Eyes tracing cracks, hinges, shadows. Then she saw it. A narrow opening between the doors just wide enough for an envelope. Someone had stood here not long ago. Her pulse quickened. She pressed lightly against the chain. It did not move. But the wooden frame felt softer than expected. Old buildings always held more than one entrance. She stepped back and looked across the empty square. No movement. No voices. Only wind carrying the weight of forgotten years. Still she felt watched. Not by a person. But by the place itself. As though Alder Row remembered her return. The feeling pulled another memory from deep inside. Her father kneeling beside her in this same square long ago. His voice quiet and serious. If I ever disappear, he told her. Do not trust the story people tell. Truth hides where records sleep. She had laughed then. Too young to understand the fear behind his eyes. The memory faded, leaving a tight ache in her chest. Alowan moved along the side of the courthouse, searching for another path. Behind the building, weeds pushed through broken concrete. A narrow staircase descended toward a basement door wrapped in shadow. Her breath caught softly. The records room. She walked closer step by step. Each movement felt like traveling backward through time. The basement door stood slightly open. Not broken. Not forced. Opened with care. Cold air drifted upward, carrying the scent of old paper. And something faintly metallic beneath it. She stopped at the top of the stairs. Every instinct warned her to leave. To return to a life where the past stayed buried. Where questions remained unanswered but safe. Yet another feeling rose stronger. Hope. Fragile but impossible to silence. If her father truly left a message. If truth still waited below. Then turning away now would mean losing him forever. She tightened her hold on the leather case. Inside rested the only object she kept from childhood. A small brass key with no mark and no name. He had given it to her the night before he vanished. Telling her one day she would understand where it belonged. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the shape of the key through the case. For 23 years it had opened nothing. Maybe that was about to change. Alowan looked once more at the silent town behind her. Clouds drifted slowly across a pale sky. Shadows stretched longer across empty streets. No witnesses remained. No turning back. She drew in a slow, steady breath. Then she stepped down toward the darkness. Wood creaked softly beneath her weight. A single sound breaking years of silence. Below, the open doorway waited. Still. Patient. As if expecting her arrival. Just before crossing fully inside, she hesitated. One question refused to rest. If the truth had been hidden for so long, why reveal it now? And who had sent the letter? Her fingers closed gently around the cold brass key. From somewhere deep beneath the courthouse came a faint shifting sound. So quiet it might have been memory, yet enough to make the darkness feel alive. Aloan Pike took the final step forward. Behind her the door moved slowly with a whisper of wood against stone. Above ground the town remained silent. But below, the past was beginning to wake. Darkness settled around Aloan like a slow closing curtain. The air below the courthouse felt colder than the street above. Not the simple chill of autumn, but the deeper cold of a place untouched by sunlight for many years. She paused on the final stair and allowed her eyes to adjust. Shapes formed slowly from shadow. Tall shelves, bent metal cabinets, stacks of boxes leaning as if tired of holding their own weight. The records room. Dust covered nearly everything. Yet the silence felt recently disturbed, as though someone had walked here not long ago and tried to leave no trace. Aloan stepped forward carefully, each movement gentle, each breath measured. The wooden floor answered with faint creaks that echoed farther than expected. Sound traveled strangely underground, stretching thin through darkness. She opened the leather case and removed the small brass key. Its surface felt colder here, heavier somehow, as if the room itself recognized it. For years she had imagined this moment in different ways. Finding a locked chest, a hidden drawer, some simple place where the key would finally belong. But nothing in front of her looked simple. Shelves stretched across the room filled with paper turned yellow by time. Handwritten labels marked years long forgotten. Some boxes had collapsed inward. Others remained sealed with brittle tape. A single hanging bulb rested above the center table, unlit, its thin cord swaying slightly though no wind should reach this deep. Aloan moved toward the table. Her heartbeat sounded louder now. Not from fear alone, but from the growing sense that she was walking into something carefully prepared. On the table lay a thin layer of dust, except for one clear space. Someone had placed an object there recently, then removed it. Her fingers hovered above the clean outline. Rectangle-shaped, about the size of a book. A quiet realization formed. She was not the first to return. The thought tightened her chest. If someone else searched for the same truth, then time might be shorter than she believed. She turned slowly, scanning the walls. Near the far corner stood a narrow door she did not remember from childhood. Paint darker than the rest. Handle polished faintly from recent touch. The sight pulled her forward. Each step felt heavier, as if the floor carried memory beneath it. When she reached the door she noticed a small keyhole set lower than usual. Not for comfort, but for concealment. Her breath caught. Hands trembling slightly she lifted the brass key. For a moment she hesitated, afraid the lock would reject it. Afraid it would fit too easily. The metal slid inside with a soft certain click. No resistance. No doubt. She closed her eyes briefly as emotion rose without warning. After 23 years the key had found its place. Slowly she turned it. The sound of the lock opening felt louder than it should, like a signal traveling through the bones of the building. She waited, listening. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No voices. Only silence watching. Aloan pushed the door inward. A narrow passage revealed itself beyond. Stone walls. Low ceiling. Air even colder than the records room. This space was older. Built before memory. before the courthouse above. She stepped inside. The passage sloped gently downward, guiding her deeper underground. Her hand brushed the wall for balance. Cold moisture clung to the stone. With each step the air carried a faint metallic scent, stronger than before. Not rust alone. Something sharper. Something that stirred unease she could not name. After several steps the passage opened into a small chamber. At the center stood a wooden chair. Large. Carved. Familiar. The throne of Alderoe. But this one was different from the chair in the main hall above. Older. Hidden. Its wood darker with age. As if the public throne had only been a copy. And this was the original truth buried beneath it. Aloan felt a quiet pressure in her chest. A sense of standing at the edge of a story long denied. She moved closer. Dust covered the floor around the chair. Yet near its base the dust had been disturbed. Fresh footprints. Not hers. Someone else had stood here very recently. Her pulse quickened. She turned, listening into the darkness behind her. Half expecting another breath. Another presence. Nothing answered. Still the feeling of being watched returned, stronger than before. She forced herself to focus on the chair. Carved patterns covered the arms. Symbols she did not recognize as a child. But now they looked deliberate. Almost like a map. Her fingers traced one shallow groove. Then another. Until she felt a small indentation beneath the right armrest. A hidden space. Her breath slowed. Carefully she pressed inward. For a moment nothing happened. Then a soft internal shift answered. Wood moving against wood. A mechanism waking after long sleep. At the base of the chair a narrow panel loosened and opened slightly. Inside rested a thin leather diary. Dark. Worn. Waiting. Aloan froze. Every year of searching. Every unanswered question. All leading to this quiet object hidden in darkness. Her hands trembled as she reached down. The leather felt fragile. Edges cracked by time. Yet carefully preserved. She lifted it slowly as though afraid the moment might vanish. No title marked the cover. No name. Only a faint impression where fingers had held it countless times. Her father's hands. Emotion rose suddenly, sharp enough to steal her breath. For years she imagined finding proof he had lived. Proof he had not abandoned her. Proof that his disappearance meant something. Now that proof rested in her hands. And she was afraid to open it. Because truth once seen could never be unseen. Silence pressed close around her. The underground chamber felt smaller. Heavier. As if waiting for her choice. At last she opened the diary. The first page revealed careful handwriting she knew instantly. Not a memory. Not a dream. Real. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to read. The words were simple. If you are reading this, then I failed to keep you safe. Her breath caught painfully. I hid the truth where power once sat, because no one searches beneath what they believe they control. The town was never what it seemed. And neither was the history they taught us. There are names missing from every record. Families erased. Decisions buried. All connected to the night the throne was sealed. Aloan's hands shook harder. A low sound echoed faintly through the passage behind her. So soft she almost imagined it. She looked up quickly. Darkness remained unchanged. Still. Listening. Her eyes returned to the page. I tried to expose it. I believed truth would protect us. I was wrong. If they discover you found this, You must leave immediately. Do not trust anyone who claims to guard the past. The final line on the page was written more hurried than the rest. Some secrets are not buried to stay hidden. They are buried to wait. A sudden noise cut through the silence. Clear this time. Footsteps. Somewhere in the passage leading down. Slow. Careful. Coming closer. Aloan's heart pounded violently. She closed the diary instinctively and turned toward the darkness. Someone else was here. And they were no longer trying to stay quiet. The sound of footsteps moved slowly through the narrow passage. Not hurried. Not uncertain. Each step placed with calm intention. Aloan felt the air leave her lungs in a shallow breath. Her fingers tightened around the leather diary as if it might disappear. For a moment she could not move. Fear held her still between instinct and memory. The footsteps continued. Closer now. Stone answering softly beneath unseen weight. She forced herself to think. Her father's warning echoed inside her mind. Do not trust anyone who claims to guard the past. The words felt alive in this underground dark. More real than the stone around her. Aloan looked quickly through the chamber. There was no second exit. No hidden stair. Only the passage where the sound approached. Running would mean moving toward whoever was coming. Staying meant being found. Her heartbeat pounded so loudly she feared it would give her away. She lowered the diary gently against her chest. As if protecting something fragile and living. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. Thick and listening. Seconds stretched painfully long. Then a faint glow appeared at the far end of the passage. A narrow beam of light sliding across stone. Searching. Someone held a flashlight. Someone who knew exactly where this path led. Aloan stepped back slowly. Her shoulder brushing the cold wood of the hidden throne. The light moved closer. Revealing dust in the air like drifting smoke. A figure emerged from darkness. Tall. Wrapped in a long coat. Face still hidden behind shadow and brightness. They paused at the entrance of the chamber. As if surprised. Or perhaps relieved. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The quiet felt heavier than any noise. Then a calm voice broke the silence. I wondered how long it would take you to find it. The voice was low. Steady. Not unfamiliar. Yet she could not place it inside memory. Aloan's throat felt tight. Who are you? The question came out softer than she intended. The figure stepped one pace closer. Light lowering slightly. Still not enough to reveal the face. Someone who has been waiting for this door to open. Waiting for me. Waiting for the truth to choose its witness. The words sounded careful. Practiced. Like lines spoken many times alone. Aloan's pulse raced faster. My father wrote this. She lifted the diary slightly. Her voice shaking despite her effort. What happened to him? Silence answered first. The figure did not move. Did not reach for the diary. Only stood there breathing slowly. At last the voice returned quieter than before. He believed the past could be corrected. Some people could not allow that. Cold spread through Aloan's chest. Is he alive? Another long pause. So long it felt like an answer already. I do not know. The honesty in the words hurt more than a lie. Aloan swallowed hard. Fighting the sudden rise of grief she had held back for years. Why send the letter now? Because the town is changing. Because the ground above us will soon be broken open. And when that happens, this secret will either disappear forever, or finally be seen. The flashlight beam shifted slightly across the carved symbols of the throne. Your father wanted you to decide which future survives. Aloan's mind struggled to follow. Why me? Because you are the only one he trusted who was never part of this place's power. The words settled heavily. Outside the chamber something faint echoed from far above. A distant metallic clang. Construction perhaps. Or demolition. Time moving closer. Aloan looked down at the diary in her hands. Pages filled with answers. And dangers she did not yet understand. If this truth is so important, why hide it instead of telling the world? A quiet breath came from the shadowed figure. Because truth without proof becomes a story. And stories are easy to bury. Your father gathered proof. Names. Records. What was taken? Who ordered it? Why the throne was sealed? Aloan felt a tremor pass through her fingers. Then this diary can change everything. Yes. The single word carried both hope and warning. Which means others are searching for it too. As if summoned by the thought. Another sound drifted faintly down the passage. Not footsteps this time. Voices. Distant. Muffled. More than one. Aloan's eyes widened. The figure turned their head slightly toward the passage. Listening. They found the entrance sooner than expected. Who? People who prefer history to remain quiet. Fear sharpened into urgency. What do we do? For the first time the figure stepped fully into the edge of light. Not enough to show every feature. But enough for Aloan to see age in the posture. And something familiar in the stillness. You choose. Take the diary and leave before they reach this chamber. Protect the truth until the world is ready. Or stay. Reveal everything now. And risk the truth being buried with us. The choice struck like sudden thunder. She had come searching for answers. Not decisions that could reshape lives. The distant voices grew louder. Stone carrying their echoes closer. Flashlight beams flickered faintly along the passage walls. They are almost here. The figure said softly. Aloan's thoughts raced. Leave and survive. Stay and fight. Trust a stranger. Trust a memory. Her father's handwriting flashed in her mind. If you are reading this, then I failed to keep you safe. Tears burned her eyes but did not fall. Safety no longer felt possible. Only meaning. She looked up at the shadowed face before her. Why are you helping me? A long silence followed. Filled only by the approaching echoes of others. Finally the answer came. Because I made a promise to a man who believed in you. Emotion tightened her chest again. Before she could speak, a harsh light suddenly cut through the passage. Brighter. Closer. Voices now clear. Search everywhere. Do not let anyone leave. Aloan's breath caught. The moment of choice had arrived. The figure stepped back into deeper shadow. Giving her space. Giving her freedom. Whatever you decide. Do it now. The voices reached the mouth of the passage. Boots against stone. Metal brushing walls. Power entering the dark. Aloan closed her eyes for one single heartbeat. Then she made her decision. Her fingers tightened around the diary. And she stepped forward. Not toward escape. But toward the approaching light. Light flooded the narrow chamber as the first figures entered the passage. Harsh white beams cut across the stone walls, destroying the quiet that had protected this place for decades. Aloan did not step back. Fear still lived inside her chest. But something stronger had risen beside it. A steady certainty she had never felt before. The diary rested firmly in her hands. Its fragile pages now heavier than any weight she had carried in life. Behind her the hidden throne stood silent. No longer only a relic of the past. Now a witness. Boots struck stone with sharp echoes. Voices low and controlled. People trained to move without hesitation. 3 figures reached the entrance of the chamber. Dark coats. Gloved hands. Light sweeping across every corner. Their movements slowed the moment they saw her. For a brief second surprise broke their discipline. They had expected to find an empty room. Not the daughter of the man who had hidden the truth. One of them stepped forward. Posture calm. Voice measured and official. "You should not be here." The words were not angry. Not loud. Simply certain. As if authority alone could decide reality. Aloan felt her heartbeat pounding in her throat. Yet when she spoke her voice carried a quiet strength. "Neither should you." Silence followed. Tight and fragile. The lead figure's light shifted toward the diary in her hands. A small movement. But impossible to miss. "Please place the book on the ground. No one needs to be harmed today." The sentence sounded practiced. Used many times in many places. Aloan's fingers tightened slightly around the worn leather. "My father tried to tell the truth. What are you afraid people will learn?" A faint change moved through the group. Not quite discomfort. But recognition. The lead figure took another slow step. History is complicated. Some truths create more damage than silence. Aloan shook her head gently. Silence already caused damage. You just buried it where no one could see. The air in the chamber felt thinner. Every breath sharper. Behind her in the deeper shadow the waiting stranger remained still. Watching. Allowing the moment to belong to her. The lead figure studied Aloan for a long quiet time. As if measuring not her strength, but her resolve. "You are standing inside something much larger than your family." "I know." Her answer came soft but unbroken. "That is why I cannot walk away." Another pause. Longer now. From far above the faint rumble of machinery vibrated through the stone. Construction drawing closer to the buried past. Time running out. The second figure in the passage shifted impatiently. "We are done waiting." The lead figure lifted a hand slightly. Command without raising a voice. Then the calm eyes returned to Aloan. "If you leave now, you can still have a life untouched by this." The offer sounded almost kind. Which made it more dangerous. Aloan felt the weight of those words. A normal life. Safety. Forgetfulness. For a moment the image appeared in her mind. Sunlight. Ordinary mornings. A future without shadows. Then another image replaced it. Her father kneeling beside her in the courthouse square. Fear hidden behind a gentle smile. Truth hides where records sleep. Her chest tightened. A life built on silence would never truly be safe. She lifted the diary slightly. Not in threat, but in declaration. People deserve to know what was taken from them. The lead figure's expression changed almost invisibly. Not anger. Something closer to sadness. "You sound just like him." Emotion flickered through Aloan before she could stop it. Then maybe he was right. For the first time tension cracked the stillness. The third figure moved forward quickly. Hand reaching. Enough. Everything happened in a single breath. The stranger behind Aloan stepped from the shadows. Voice sharp with sudden authority. Stop! The command froze the movement instantly. Light shifted, revealing the stranger's face at last. Older than Aloan. Eyes tired from years of watching, yet filled with fierce clarity. Recognition passed between the armed figures and the stranger. Silent. Heavy. You. One of them whispered. The stranger ignored the word. Focus only on Aloan. There is no more time. From above the rumble grew louder. Dust drifting faintly from the ceiling stones. If the chamber collapsed, the truth would vanish forever. Aloan understood now. This moment was the final chance. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. She looked down at the diary. Pages holding names erased from memory. Proof buried with intention. Her hands stopped trembling. Calm spread slowly through her chest. Not the calm of safety, but the calm of decision. She stepped forward into the full light. I am not leaving without this being seen. The words echoed softly against stone. Small, yet impossible to take back. The lead figure closed their eyes briefly, as if mourning an outcome already known. Then the eyes opened again. Resolved. I was hoping you would choose differently. A signal passed silently through the group. Aloan felt the shift instantly. The moment before action. But she did not move. Because something unexpected happened. A deep cracking sound rolled through the chamber. Stone grinding against stone. Older than any voice present. Everyone looked upward. A line spread across the ceiling like slow lightning. Dust falling heavier now. The construction above had reached too far. Too deep. The hidden past was breaking open. Fear replaced control on every face. We have to leave. One of the figures said urgently. The lead figure hesitated. Eyes moving between the collapsing stone and the diary in Aloan's hands. Choice mirrored against choice. Another crack thundered louder. Fragments dropping to the floor. Time ended. The stranger beside Aloan spoke quickly. There is another exit through the lower tunnel. But it will not stay open long. The lead figure made a final decision. Go. The command shocked the others. Sir. Go now. Authority left no room to argue. In sudden motion the armed figures turned and rushed back into the passage. Retreating from the falling stone. Only the lead figure remained for one heartbeat longer. Eyes meeting Aloan's. Not enemies in that instant. Only witnesses to the same ending. Protect it. The figure said quietly. Then turned and disappeared into the darkness. The chamber shook violently. Stone breaking free. The stranger grabbed Aloan's arm. This way. They ran toward a narrow opening behind the hidden throne. Barely visible before the dust began to fall. Cold air rushed upward from the unseen tunnel. Aloan clutched the diary against her chest. Holding the past as the world above collapsed. They stepped into the darkness below. And the ceiling of the chamber gave way behind them. Sealing the throne. Burying the place where truth had slept. But not the truth itself. Because Aloan carried it forward. Into whatever waited next. Darkness swallowed them as they moved through the lower tunnel. Not the silent darkness of waiting rooms and forgotten basements. But the living dark of earth and stone pressed close on every side. Aloan could hear her own breath and the uneven rhythm of footsteps beside her. Dust followed them into the narrow passage. Carrying the distant sound of collapse fading slowly behind. The hidden chamber was gone. The throne buried again. But the truth remained warm against her chest inside the fragile leather diary. They kept moving downward for several long moments. The tunnel sloping gently before rising again toward air that felt less cold, less ancient. At last the stranger lifted a small light. Dim and careful. Just enough to see rough wooden beams supporting the low ceiling. This tunnel was older than the courthouse. Older than the town above. Built for escape long before anyone living could remember. Aloan's legs felt weak now that the danger behind them had quieted. Fear leaving the body often made space for exhaustion. Still she did not slow. Because something inside her had changed in that collapsing chamber. A line crossed that could never be stepped back over. For most of her life she had searched for the past. Trying to understand why it disappeared. Now the past was no longer something distant. It was something she carried. Something the future would depend on. After a long stretch of silence the tunnel opened into a small wooden hatch. Faint grey light slipped through the cracks. Morning or evening? She could not tell. Only that open sky waited on the other side. The stranger pushed the hatch upward slowly. Careful of sound. Careful of being seen. Cool air rushed down around them. Fresh and wide and alive. They stepped out into tall grass behind a line of abandoned storage sheds at the far edge of town. Hidden from the courthouse square. Hidden from the road. The world above looked unchanged. Clouds drifting. Wind bending dry weeds. Silence holding everything together as if nothing had happened beneath the ground. But Aloan knew better. Somewhere under the broken stone the past had tried to stay buried one final time. And failed. She turned toward the stranger for the first time in open light. The face looked older here. Lines carved by years of secrecy and waiting. Eyes carrying both relief and grief. You knew my father. Her voice came soft but steady. The stranger nodded once. We worked in the records together. We believed history should belong to everyone. Not only to those who shape it. Emotion tightened her throat. Why did you never come for me? Pain flickered across the stranger's expression. Because watching you from a distance was the only way to keep you safe. If they knew he left the truth for you, you would have disappeared too. The words settled heavily but gently. Like truth that hurt yet healed at the same time. Aloan looked down at the diary in her hands. He trusted me with this. But I do not know what to do next. The stranger followed her gaze. Truth does not need perfect plans. It only needs someone willing to carry it into the light. A quiet wind moved through the grass around them. Soft. Almost peaceful. For the first time since arriving in Alderrow, Aloan felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not grief. Possibility. She opened the diary again. Careful of the fragile spine. Pages filled with names carefully written. Dates. Orders. Proof of families erased from records to protect power and silence. Lives pushed out of memory as if they had never existed. Her chest ached as she read. But beneath the ache grew something stronger. Purpose. If the world saw these pages, the story of the town would change forever. And with it, the stories of every place that buried truth the same way. She closed the diary slowly. Then we make sure it is seen, she said. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Simply certain. The stranger studied her for a long quiet moment. As if seeing not the child once protected, but the person she had become. Your father hoped you would say that. Emotion rose again but did not break her voice. I wish he were here to see it. The stranger looked toward the distant courthouse, barely visible beyond trees and empty streets. In a way, he is. Silence followed. Not empty this time, but full of memory. Far away, a car engine echoed faintly along the highway. Life continuing beyond the forgotten town. Aloan breathed in deeply, filling her lungs with air that no longer felt heavy. For years she believed her story ended the night her father vanished. Everything after only wandering. Now she understood. This was where the real story began. Days later, the town of Alder Row appeared in national headlines. Not because of its abandoned buildings. Not because of the courthouse collapse. But because of the documents released to the world. Proof carried out of darkness by someone who refused to let silence win. Historians argued. Officials denied. Communities searched their own records with new eyes. Names once erased returned to memory. Families long ignored finally spoken aloud. The truth did not destroy the world, but it changed it. Quietly. Permanently. And in a small apartment far from Alder Row. Aloan watched the news with the diary resting safely beside her. The leather cover looked the same. Worn. Fragile. Ordinary. Yet everything had changed. She no longer felt like someone searching for lost places. She felt like someone who had found direction. Grief for her father still lived inside her. It always would. But it no longer felt empty. Because his final act had not been disappearance. It had been trust. Trust that one day she would walk into the dark. Find the hidden truth. And choose light anyway. Outside her window, the city moved with ordinary sound. Cars. Voices. Life continuing without knowing how close silence had come to winning. Aloan placed her hand gently on the diary. Not as a relic of the past, but as a promise for the future. Some secrets are buried to stay hidden. Others wait for the right person to uncover them. Not the strongest. Not the most powerful. Only the one willing to see. She looked out at the wide living world beyond the glass. And for the first time in many years, the future did not feel like an empty road. It felt open. Waiting. Just like the truth once waited beneath a forgotten throne.